Thanks for downloading a 3CR podcast. 3CR is an independent community radio station based in Melbourne, Australia. We need your financial support to keep going. Go to www.3cr.org.au for more information and to donate online. Now stay tuned for your 3CR podcast.
It depends who's telling the story, I suppose. The prisoners would have one view, the people who work in the prison system would have another, and I think it's up to people to decide where the truth is.
Give government propaganda and the media spin doctors the flick. And check out Doin' Time for news, views and tunes on prison issues from Guantanamo Bay to Christmas Island to prisons and detention centres everywhere. Every Monday at 4 p.m. on your community radio 3CR.
We are still fired up and we're still talking about revolution.
Hello and welcome to the Doin' Time show. This is 3CR Community Radio, 855 AM on the dial, streaming live on www.3cr.org.au. This is Marissa and we'll be taking you through until 5 o'clock this evening. And we've got quite a few things coming up on the show. Joining me in the studio actually is Ian.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much, Marissa, and particularly Doing Time. I do admire your work, particularly all those wonderful speeches at the rallies for Stop Black Deaths in Custody.
Oh yeah, I did some stuff for Easter actually, and I've done a couple of other things as well for the Prison Abolition Collective, and you must have heard some of my speeches around black deaths in custody. And I got permission from a lot of elders to do those speeches actually, Ian, so I certainly wasn't working alone. And in fact, Uncle Ray Jackson used to be a very, very important part of this show before he passed away. And so we will be speaking about deaths in custody today, and the people that we do mention will be the people whose families have given permission to actually release those names. And any sensitive things, just make sure that some of the views, the things that come out, they may be deaths of loved ones, and Doing Time is always sensitive to that. It's been going on for years, this show, Ian.
Wow.
Yeah, it's been going for years. We've done a lot of violations of human rights and have had a lot of Aboriginal people on this show, including Robbie. Cheerio to Robbie out there.
Oh,
and Gillard and anyone else who's listening.
Debbie,
so,
because, I know what the work you've done, and particularly Beyond the Bars is something that impresses me no end, especially the music and the words, and how long they have been inside the women's prison, and certainly all the prisons in Victoria.
Absolutely, and Kutcher Edwards is actually involved with Beyond the Bars, and they've done a lot of stuff there. So, Ian, what about, I'll just give a bit of an intro. So to start off with, we're going to be speaking with Lydia Thorpe, and we're going to be talking to her about the citizenship and what's happened. It appears, and there's a lot of stuff in the mainstream media about this, about how the Yarra Council and also the Darebin is also following suit as well, in terms of actually they wanted to take off the ceremonies, didn't they, Ian? To not have citizenship ceremonies on Australia Day, which is perfectly all right, because there's a lot of unfinished business. Australia Day is a day of death and a day of atrocities that have happened to Aboriginal people. It's not really a proper thing, is it? And so we're going to talk to Lydia Thorpe about that, maybe talk a little bit about deaths in custody. And Ian is going to be joining us for that. And Ian, you've been on Joe's show, haven't you? And you've been on Robbie's show as well, so you know the lingo.
Oh yes, and I was fortunate one occasion when Johnny Mack and everyone came back for their national broadcasting meetings in Cairns to listen to some of the music that Johnny Mack brought back, and it's so important, the national Indigenous broadcasting network, which runs right across this country, and
absolutely,
it's very. I'm honoured to be on your show, and it'll be wonderful to listen to Lydia, because this is an explosive issue about the wonderful stand that Darebin and Yarra have taken, and it must give people a lot of heart, from
Absolutely.
especially from Black Lives Matter in America, and particularly the endorsement by Trump of the neo-Nazis and white supremacy, and how it's created such an enormous pressure on Australia's own brutal treatment, white Australian policy and
Absolutely.
the Constitution. So it'll be wonderful to hear you and Lydia, because you've been at this game longer than I, and it's a great honour. I often think about how lucky I've been in terms of not doing time. You know what I mean?
No, yeah, I know.
Because it's a hard thing. So.
And you're back with the Doing Time show, and so we're speaking now with Lydia Thorpe. And Lydia, I wanted to just tell you that Ian is actually joining us as well. You would know Ian, yeah? He's been with Robbie a lot on these shows.
Hello, Lydia.
You there, Lydia? Yeah,
hi,
Lydia?
Ian. How are you?
Hi, good, thank you. Lydia, good, nice to hear you. It's nice to be on Doing Time.
Yeah.
I think it's been a pleasure. Marissa invited me a few weeks ago, and it's a great honour to, be hearing some of your comments, particularly on Darebin and Yarra Council, which has made such a wonderful opportunity for the city to move ahead in a beautiful, not racially hatred, but a challenging way.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, Lydia,
Yes.
I think...
For sure.
Yeah, we were talking about this off air today, weren't we? And Ian has made some really good points here. But, can you just tell us a little, just for listeners who perhaps aren't up with all this stuff, can you explain what's happened and also talk about what the Turnbull government has done as well?
So from a Victorian perspective, the Yarra Council were the first council to make a decision not to celebrate Australia Day and to not do citizenship ceremonies on that day. And, that was received really well from blackfellas, of course, and a lot of people who know the truth of this country, a lot of our supporters. And then Darebin Council was certainly not too far behind Yarra, being another progressive council who are working closely with their Aboriginal communities. And both councils have advisory committees, Aboriginal advisory committees that provide advice. And so they've taken up they've done the right thing. They've listened to their Aboriginal advisory groups, and they've stopped doing citizenship ceremonies on that day because of the sensitivities that it brings for our people. And it's created a discussion, I think, across the country. And I know that there are, several other councils writing motions as we speak to follow suit. It's just which one will get in next. And in terms of Turnbull's response to that, well, what can I say? He's totally... I think he's just being really racist, actually. I think his response is a racist attitude, which reflects a lot of other attitudes that we've got to deal with in this country. I don't think, he talks about unity and the values of the Australian values.
Yeah.
Well, I looked at those Australian values, and what he's doing don't reflect the Australian values. So he's contradictory in what he's saying. And good on him for stripping the citizenship rights for councils, because it's made those councils also think about, well, what does that mean? It really, it's, to have traditional owners involved in a citizenship ceremony is far more meaningful than just having the government tick off your citizenship in this country. So there have been traditional owner groups that have offered to do ceremonies. So I think we're heading into a good space, but at the same time we've got to be careful of all the racism that this has created.
There is a lot of racism.
Really rife right now.
You know, Lydia, I think the reason why I felt like I needed to invite you on the show is for two reasons. One, because it's in regards to the fact that we definitely need Aboriginal people in Victoria to voice their opinions. Do you know what I'm saying? And also about the fact that it's very, very... Sorry about the background noise there. We had some technical difficulties. But also in regards to the fact that it's important to look at the fact that the government has stripped, hasn't it? Has stripped these councils, haven't they? You know, of the fact that they're now not allowed to have anything, are they? Is that right?
Well, they're not. But yeah, that's right. So they've only stripped Yarra Council so far. They'll strip Darebin Council next.
Yeah.
But there are a number of MPs that have put their hands up to do the citizenship ceremony. So,
okay.
You know, I think that we could have some really beautiful ceremony happen out of this, where Wurundjeri people are doing the citizenship ceremony and we get some MPs to sign it off. I mean, it's quite easily done, and it can be done far more respectfully and with much more meaning if they had traditional owners involved in that process. And it's a good way to, you know, start a conversation about a treaty, because these are the things that, you know, you would see as a key ingredient into a treaty.
That's true. Can you talk more about that? When you say treaty, like you mean in terms of unfinished business?
You know, I think in terms of telling the truth. You know, I think before we have a treaty in this country, we need to have, you know, there's a number of our old people that have talked about truth and justice commissions. You can't have a treaty without this country owning and knowing the truth. And it seems that when we're putting it out there, we're telling the truth of the history of this country. You know, all these people are coming out and just being outright racist because they have no idea of the truth of this country. So the schools that they've been to never told them the truth. It was built on a colonial education system, teaching about explorers and how wonderful Captain Cook and Macmillan and other wonderful explorers were, and how, you know, we need to honour those explorers rather than the real history of them being responsible for massacres in this country. So I think, you know, we can't talk about a treaty unless we talk about the truth first.
Yeah. And in fact, the paternal attitudes of British migrants and their descendants continue to dominate Aboriginal discussions in the media, as well as in government. There's a lot of exclusion.
And they're seeking out... Yeah. And I spoke today to a board that I sit on. I won't mention that board, but it's a mainstream board, and it's to do with education, you know, and it was a bit of a cultural awareness session, and I raised the issue, and it was really challenging for people. But it's, you know, I'm saying to them, how are we going to get the truth out there?
That's right.
You know, we need to start telling the truth, and we've got to lead by example. So it is hard. It's hard for white fellas to realise that their forebearers were all mainly murderers and, you know, invaders and people that they should be ashamed of. But, you know, we're happy to move on from it, but own it. Own the truth first so that we can have some healing. This constant blatant denial is even more hurtful, I think.
Our government is very much in denial.
I got a Facebook message yesterday.
Yep.
Well, our government's always been in denial. I just think this Liberal government is really, someone said that he's if he was in America, he'd be known as the leader of the KKK, the way he's responding to things. I can't, I don't know how he can talk about unity when he's being so divisive.
It's very true.
Yeah, I don't know. We just need to keep putting the pressure on and have more councils talk about it. There's been, councils, I'm in New South Wales at the moment, I know 2 councils here are talking about it. So we just need more, grassroots people to put pressure on their councils to start having the conversation and start uniting with their other councils. The more councils that stand up, the more we're putting pressure on this government to do the right thing.
And as Ian said, didn't you, Ian? You were saying that it was good what the councils were doing.
Oh, look, Lydia, I think it's wonderful what you're doing. I've never seen anything unravel like this. And I think your comparison with the KKK and the Prime Minister is very very important, because it shows the depth of change that's occurring in America. Because it's interesting that this fella Trump, he is related to Roosevelt. And Roosevelt, you remember, was a president in the Second World War, but he was challenged at that time by a lot of people because he wouldn't speak out against the lynching in the South. Lydia? In that time.
Yeah.
And that's why I think it's very important that you make that comparison with the deep racism that this country has been imbued with, particularly in the education system and so on. But Lydia, it seems with all this technology and smartphones, it's such a profound change that I think many councils now have to recognise that there's such a groundswell against Invasion Day as such a, celebrating what you would call the gassing of good people in Jews and gypsies and communists in the Second World War. It's the same.
It's exactly the same. And Lydia, I know you've got to board a plane soon, isn't it? But I just wanted to quickly, have you got a couple more minutes?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, just wanted to ask you, just so that listeners, just to clarify so listeners know this. So this racism, because we've talked about how honourable it is that the councils has done the citizenship, taken the ceremonies off. But what did the government actually do that was racist? What do you think, in your opinion, or in your view, as an Aboriginal person?
Well,
what did he do?
He's saying, he's basically just, fobbing us off and saying this is ridiculous. How dare they try and, not they, but it's like the notion of Australia Day being racist, or us calling it Invasion Day, or, any connotation to any kind of real history of that day, he's just dismissing.
Yeah. And
I think that is a form of racism in that, what about us? What about the 3% of Aboriginal people, First Nations people of this country? What rights do we have? Does he represent us?
Exactly.
I mean, he's the Prime Minister, yet he's dismissing our concerns, our views. So I just think, his practices and his comments are racist.
Extremely racist. And
unfortunately, he's the leader of the country. And
yeah, it's true. And look, wouldn't it be great to have a treaty in Victoria? Is that something that elders in different states are thinking, or do people think it's better to have an Australia-wide treaty?
Well, I'd like the 300 clans to make that decision.
Yeah.
And the way the treaty discussions are happening in Victoria, it's not enabling clans to have a voice at all. So I'm going to, leave that decision making,
of course,
to the old people of those clans when they eventually have an opportunity to talk about it. And I think that needs to happen across this country, so that clans can have the right to make a decision for themselves, to self-determine what's right for them. I mean, if we look at the Waitangi Treaty, there's one clan group that said that a treaty wasn't for them. So there's one clan group that's not part of that treaty.
There's just got to be more consultation.
Well, I hate that word. That word. I just think that clans need an opportunity to come together, which they're not ever given in Victoria.
That's what I meant. Yeah.
We're railroaded by native title, which has thrown us all into one basket.
Yeah.
That's why there's rows. 300 clans. Why aren't we meeting as 300 clans? Separate clan groups.
Together.
Separate issues, separate wants and needs.
Yep. Not to lump everybody in
so
one basket.
We need the opportunity. No, we're not all the same. We might agree on some fundamental, areas that can go towards a treaty, but there's people in our state that don't know what that means for them, so they're not part of it because they're not part of the discussion, and they don't want to be part of the discussion because they don't understand what it means.
Exactly.
I get that.
Yep.
So, yeah.
Lydia, thank you so much for coming onto the program. It's approximately 4:26 and you're listening to an interview with Lydia Thorpe, and we've got Ian joining us in the studio as well. Any final comments, Lydia, you want to make? And thank you so much for coming on.
I'm just, very... we need to talk about a clan-based approach, and we need people to help us do that. We can't do that alone. The Victorian Traditional Owner Land Justice Group are an unfunded sovereign body, representative of most of the clan groups, and we've got a publication of the clans and what treaty means, what sovereignty is, and, we don't have any funds to reproduce that information out to people. They're the grassroots movements that unfortunately aren't being supported by the treaty discussions that are happening by the state government. So, if anyone out there wants to support that to happen, then I'm more than happy to, take that further and have a discussion about how we can do that. But otherwise, we need to all be on board about a clan-based treaty. Know whose clan land you are on. Know the wants and needs of that clan so that you can be part of a treaty discussion too.
Look, Lydia, I'm just glad that we're able to talk about this in more detail because, like last time we were speaking, there was on the 7th of August, a couple of weeks ago, and the hair at the back of my neck was standing up on end, sister, okay, in regards to the fact that, you were talking about how the Aboriginal people didn't even speak English, couldn't even speak English, they couldn't understand what was happening at the event. At those of the Gamma, not just the Gamma Festival, but all the conferences.
Constitutional recognition, yeah.
Yeah, the constitutional recognition, how they had to go into the bush, and didn't have anywhere to stay, and it was just disgusting. Like it's no pride in genocide. Okay, that's what I say. And it's gross.
Exactly.
Uncle Ray Jackson,
and as a result of
go on.
Sorry.
Go on. Yeah.
I was just going to say, as a result of speaking out, the barrage of racism that I'm getting on my personal Facebook private messages is disgusting.
Oh.
Abos, Muslims, they're even bringing Muslims into it. Like, it's just disgusting. And, you wonder why blackfellas don't speak out. As soon as you do, you're a target. And I just want to say to any Aboriginal person listening out there, we need to unite on this fight and not give up. We've got to keep the pressure on and get this country to own the truth so we can move forward.
Absolutely, and I was just about to say, Uncle Ray Jackson used to be a permanent part of our show. You would have heard he passed away, and he used to say all the time that the Constitution is a white man's document and it needs to be rewritten and updated before anything else could be done. Yeah.
Yep. Absolutely.
A
treaty can do that. A treaty can help rewrite this racist constitution, and a constitution that is so out of date that they can't even have people in Parliament that are, not citizens or they're all illegal. But anyway, that's another discussion.
Yeah, that's right. Listen, something for another show. Lydia, thank you so much for coming on, and thank you, Ian, for joining our discussion.
Thank you, Lydia. Could I just say, Lydia, there's a lot of articles in the English papers about new regulations to try and stop, cyber abuse on the internet, especially in London, and it's going to have quite an impact internationally. It's but it's appalling to hear what sort of racist abuse, and especially the important work you're doing, like trying to educate these boards about cultural awareness and the importance of a treaty. But it's wonderful to hear all the work, and it's I think it'll be an interesting thing because there's more opportunity for exposing the racist abuse on the internet,
Yeah, no, it's a good thing.
Absolutely, Ian. And one of the people that has racially abused me, I rang his workplace today, so he's in a bit of trouble, and he's since sent me a very unheartfelt apology, and wants to have coffee with me. And so
you're not going, are you?
My message there is no. I might send all my uncles in though. But my message there is call it out, call it out, expose it, show it, and don't let these fellas get away with it.
That's exactly right. But you don't want to be stuck in Sydney, do you, Lydia? We'll let you catch your plane.
No, I'm at the gate.
Great. All right. Well, thanks so much. You take care.
Deadly, thank you. Thanks,
you.
Ian.
Yeah, bye, Lydia. Wonderful to hear you.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye-bye. And that was Lydia Thorpe. And wasn't that a most heartening discussion, Ian?
Oh, look, it's wonderful to hear the work Lydia is doing. I remember the beautiful gardens she used to make, and it reminded me of, some of the old MUA members here in Melbourne, Chico Dixon, that Robbie plays. We'll build communes, real alternative ways of creating jobs and providing self-determination for Indigenous people and unemployed. Wonderful work that Lydia is doing in that realm, especially the importance of, cultural awareness, something that the police really need. If we are to, really protect Indigenous people in such appalling levels incarcerated at the present time.
Ian, I'm just so glad that you've come onto the show and see, it wasn't so hard.
No, I'm sorry. I thank you, but you did make me feel very, very at ease. I admire the way you can do public speaking at all those rallies, because you need to be able to, put it down in a way that it will have an impact with the audience, and it's thorough and it's not challenged, And I think we're in a different ball game now in terms of what's happening in America. The elections last year, even the Financial Review said, particularly with Bernie Sanders, it was a competition between a socialist and Trump, a fascist. Well, we've seen him support, neo-Nazis and the KKK, and he's in a lot of hot water now, a lot of hot water. You can't come out and abuse people and go back to the 1930s and this kind of attitude of bourgeois bigotry. It doesn't work, you know.
You know what? I mean, they say that Trump stole the election, but at the end of the day, isn't Trump, in a way, a reflection of the American people? Like, in a way, like there's a lot of historical racism, and in some ways it's all about religion. It's all about religion. It's all about, it's bad.
Oh, of course, but the whole nature of American society, particularly in the 20th century, the wars, and particularly the way that England was able to overturn the Civil War against slavery. You know, their assassination of George Washington, and particularly all the gold ships that come from here, Bendigo, Walhalla, Ballarat, all that wealth that drove England in the 1860s and overturned a great deal of positive things that were coming out of America. But then we had the great segregation movement. We had the lynchings. We had the travelling at the back of the bus. But what an inspiration, Black Lives Matter, because I've seen that sign across Europe, even in Berlin, people holding up them signs. And I thought how appropriate it was in relation to the courage of Darebin and Yarra that you mentioned that slogan, there's no pride in genocide, because...
That's exactly right.
It's you see so many young people with those beautiful handmade banners with that slogan throughout the Invasion Day rally. Tens of thousands of people.
That's right, and there's quite a lot. Now, and in fact we can talk about this, all the time. It's very relevant. But moving on now, because we've got our next interview coming up, and Ian, I'd love you to stay if you want to. Hello, Lucy. Welcome to the program.
Marissa, how are you going?
Lovely to have you. Not bad. Yeah, so Lucy, we invite... Ian's here too. Ian's joining me in the studio today. He's done a lot of work with Robbie Thorpe and Joe Toscano at 3CR. And I'm just introducing you. This is Lucy from the Refugee Action Collective, and we're going to be speaking about refugees and asylum seekers and how the immigration is actually going to be cutting off the income support of refugees and asylum seekers in Australia. There was an article in The Age about it. So, Lucy, could you just give us a little bit of background on that?
Sure. Well, maybe best to start with... people might remember the Let Them Stay campaign from last year, where there were 267 refugees who were brought from Nauru to Australia for medical attention. This was for help that they couldn't get from Nauru, some really severe medical problems that people were experiencing, trauma from rape that they had experienced on Nauru, and other psychiatric problems as well. These people have been brought to Australia. Some of them had been receiving treatment for a while. Some babies had been born from these people in Australia, and there was a High Court challenge to let them stay in Australia. That failed, and the government was preparing to send these people back to Nauru, to the place of, for many of them, a place of extreme abuse and neglect and the source of so many problems. But in response to their preparation to do that and the loss of the High Court challenge, a massive movement, the Let Them Stay movement, came up, and we saw premiers across the country, teachers, doctors, every man and their dog was saying, I will get in the way to let these people stay. They can have a room at my house, sanctuary at my church, this sort of thing. So this cohort of people has in fact been staying in Australia. The government hasn't made a move against them until now, because they knew that there is an army of people willing to protect them. But what we saw over the weekend and this morning, 100 of these 267 people received very threatening letters from Peter Dutton saying you're going to be cut off income support, you're going to be booted out of any supported accommodation, and your removal back to Nauru or to your place of wherever it was that you came from, is impending. So a very threatening and intimidating letter against a group of people who, the people's movement has a very big stake in protecting and saying let them stay. So that's what's happened over the last couple of days, and quite rightly, we've seen again people step up and say, no way, hands off that 100 people, hands off all of those people. They should be allowed to stay, and not only should they be allowed to stay, the people on Manus Island and Nauru should be brought to Australia and allowed to stay here too.
So basically, just to summarise for listeners, and I'll explain this to you as well, Ian, and feel free to jump in if you need to, but the Turnbull government, and today's Monday, it's effectively throwing up to 100 Australia-based asylum seekers onto the street by immediately cutting their income support, isn't it, Lucy? And giving them 3 weeks to find a place to live. And,
That's right.
it's a drastic move, isn't it? And it was revealed in leaked government documents, wasn't it, according to The Age, that show the Department of Immigration and Border Protection will issue dozens of asylum seekers, possibly including a pregnant woman, transferred to Australia from offshore detention for medical reasons, with a new visa known as the Final Departure Bridging E-Visa. Right? Now, what's
very
that?
Ominous.
What's that? That's just, what's going on?
Well, that's exactly it. I mean, in a lot of ways, these people have been between visas, or they've been in a glitch in the system, I guess, because they don't have a visa. They've been essentially in detention, community detention. So in some ways, this is the government saying, okay, well, here's a visa, but it's in line with its theory that no one should ever be allowed to settle in Australia who's been in the offshore camps. It can't say, here's a visa, you can stay. So it said, here's a visa, final departure. And that's the other threatening. I mean, it's obviously very, very cruel to kick people off any kind of income support, any people who are as vulnerable as these people are, but, to also threaten them with final departure to Nauru or Manus is absolutely outrageous.
It is outrageous, Lucy. And, look at the quote. I don't know if you've read this article, but it's horrendous. This is a quote from Immigration. From Monday, 28th August, you will need to find money each week for your own accommodation costs. From this date, you will also be responsible for all your other living costs like food, clothing and transport. You are expected to sign the Code of Behaviour when you are released into the Australian community. I mean, what is this?
Yep. It's all this rhetoric from Dutton, and he reiterated it this morning when he made that jibe about un-Australian lawyers who are protecting these people. This idea that there's something un-Australian about seeking asylum, there's something un-Australian about being a refugee. The racism is palpable, and he's playing a racist card and a racist game. And I think it's absolutely appalling what's happened, but he's not going to get away with it. So many people have come out once again and pledged whatever it is that they can to the Asylum Seeker Resource Centre, and even Bill Shorten this time, couldn't stomach it. I mean, he's stomached a lot of refugee racism, but even this he couldn't stomach, which I'm pleased to see. But that needs to be forced further, because it's not just a situation that these people are being cut off income support. There are still all the people on Nauru and Manus. Those islands haven't closed. There's the promise that they'll get to go to the US, but we've seen what kind of tatters that US deal is in. And meanwhile, they're living in limbo. There's 50 people on Nauru who need medical transfers to Australia, just like these people did. 3 women who need abortions, but abortion is illegal on Nauru, and the Nauruan government is not allowing those people come to Australia to access that abortion. So we need to close the camps, and the demand needs to be, let these people stay, give them resettlement services, give them the income support they need, but also close the camps and bring those refugees here.
I'll tell you what, look, I totally, as a radio broadcaster, and Ian, I'm sure you would agree with me as well, that, yeah?
Yes.
To let them stay. But I think what really gets to me, though, is the fact that New Zealand offered to take some of these refugees, and the Australian government said no. And you know why? Because there's a pathway from New Zealand to Australia. I mean, it's so obvious. Yeah? Ian, did you want to...
It's obvious.
Yes,
well, I mean...
I think, Lucy, it's wonderful to hear you, because what a nice response to this, particularly to point out the appalling conditions of those are still in the ruined manors, and, the cruelty of the government's policy. But all around Melbourne, I must agree with you on the cohort of people who are saying, let them stay right across there. I travel the network and I see posters outside people's individual houses. Bring them here. Let them stay. I think you're right that this will create a massive upsurge in support, and, because it's such an appalling thing, and you do such a wonderful job. I know a gentleman there, Peter Farago, and I think he works as part of it. He's always at the rallies. He's an old gentleman.
Legend of the Refugee Action Collective.
He's a wonderful lecturer. He used to be a lecturer at Monash back in the 70s, and wonderful attitude to Indigenous people. He was a refugee from Hungary, Second World War. He knows what it's like. You know what I mean? On a personal level,
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, Ian, you make me feel better, actually, because he's amazing, Ian, Lucy. He's everywhere, and he gets it, Yeah. It's a good thing.
Well... and there are, like as you say, there are so many connections between the fight for Aboriginal rights and the fight for refugee rights. I think, the issue of racism in Australia, the White Australia policy, and incarceration of people, whether they're Aboriginal or refugees, there's a common thread there, and there's a common fight as well. And I think... it's heartening. It's heartening when people make those connections too and stand up, whether it's, on Invasion Day or at the refugee rallies, and hearing refugees as well, Beirut Buchani in Manus Island, when he says, that there needs to be justice for Aboriginal people, no to the invasion, that sort of thing. That there's a common battle that we have to fight.
Absolutely, and in fact, I used to visit an asylum seeker at Meta in Broadmeadows, and they actually kicked him out. The guards found some type of contraband. I think he had money on him, and he wasn't allowed to have money. People put food in the women put food in their bras because they're not allowed to bring food. They're not allowed to have chocolate. All this rubbish. And this particular man, who I haven't gotten permission to release his name on air, but he was there for 7 years, okay, and then they transferred him to, I believe, it might be Nauru, I think, and now they're going to bring him to Sri Lanka. It's disgusting. And he was in limbo. It's approximately 4:51, and you're listening to an interview with Lucy Honan from the Refugee Action Collective. We haven't got much time left. Have you got any final comments, Lucy, that you wanted to convey?
Just to stay tuned. Obviously, the Asylum Seeker Resource Centre is getting inundated with offers of support to help these asylum seekers and refugees, but political support is really important at the moment as well. I think, the Dutton regime, the Turnbull government has overplayed its hand. It's really the fact that the Labor Party has drawn the line over this means that there is an opening for us to push further. And as I was saying before, it's really important for the demand and for what people need to be pushing our government to do is to say not just let them stay, but bring them here and close the camps. So stay tuned for Refugee Action Collective has a meeting tonight, and we're going to be planning our next action. It'll probably be this weekend or very, very soon to ram this message home. So stay tuned. Look at our website or Facebook page to find out when the next rally is, and please get along. Yeah,
because I think the deadline for the what's the deadline in October? There was a deadline there. What's that one?
There was. That was another situation. There's about 30,000 refugees living in the community as well, and 12,000 of them still had not had the opportunity to apply for refugee status because the immigration minister had only just lifted the bar to allow them to apply. So he lifted the bar and then said, if you don't have it, have your application in by October 1, you're out. So it sounds as though most people have had the opportunity, they've been in contact with lawyers, and they're at the point where they have been able to lodge applications or very close to. So I think we're okay on that front. But it was another, it was of a piece with the general brutal, hateful policies on the one hand from the government, and then on the other hand from the refugee movement and people who want to be involved and show solidarity to asylum seekers and refugees, just pitching in and saying, what do you need? Can I help? I want to be involved.
Absolutely. And in fact, just to finish off the discussion, it's great that we've made those vital connections with Aboriginal people, because Aboriginal people are refugees in their own country. And it's always good. And in
Absolutely.
fact, yeah, it's pretty disheartening, but we're all doing the work and we have to keep going. Yeah, Lucy, thanks so much for coming onto the program.
Thanks, Marissa, and thanks, Ian.
And good luck with your meeting tonight, and it'll be a pleasure, because Robbie always speaks about no arguments with these boat people. He's passionate, and many other Indigenous broadcasters here.
Absolutely.
They see the appalling plight. More refugees now than the Second World War. What's happening in the Middle East is, and it's wonderful the work you're doing. But what a rapid reply to this Dutton letter. But I particularly want to congratulate you on your use of the word regime and Dutton. I think that's important for us to remember. That's the way Indigenous people speak. They don't see it as a legitimate government.
That's exactly right. All right. No, that's fantastic. Take good care, Lucy. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Marissa.
Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye now.
Bye-bye. And that was Lucy Honan from the Refugee Action Collective, and joining us with Ian in the studio and having a discussion about some of the atrocities that the Australian government is performing at the moment. And it's approximately 4:55. I wanted to actually make a special announcement, and it's an event that's being co-hosted, I believe, with RISE, and the Warriors of Aboriginal Resistance will also be involved. September the 16th, First Nations and Refugee Solidarity panel discussion, and it's hosted by RISE, Refugees, Survivors and Ex-Detainees. Saturday, September 16th at 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. The State Library of Victoria, Village Roadshow Theaterette entrance, 179 La Trobe Street, Melbourne, and it's a panel, basically, and as an extension of our ongoing work and last year's Sovereignty Sanctuary launch event at the foot of Parliament House of Victoria, RISE will host a panel discussion between First Nation people and refugees who have sought protection in Australia, and that's in inverted commas. The discussion aims to critically address the current and historical treatment of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples and refugees who are coming to seek protection via boats. It seeks to discuss what grassroots solidarity movements, self-determination and community organising has looked like and might look like in order to create meaningful, sustainable movements that challenge colonialism, border imperialism and white supremacy. So get along to that. It seeks to discuss what grassroots solidarity movements, self-determination and community organisation has looked like, as I said, and might look like in order to create meaningful, sustainable movements that challenge colonialism, border imperialism and white supremacy. All panellists, including the host, have committed a number of years towards solidarity work and organising campaigns for their own community groups on a grassroots level. Additionally, everyone involved in the panel discussion are from an Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander background, as well as refugees and ex-detainees who have sought protection in Australia. So I believe, I can't find at the moment who the speakers are, but I believe that Mariki is going to be speaking. Here we go. Mariki Onus, Eugenia Flynn, and there's also another speaker, Tanya, as well, and Abdul Beige. And my pronunciation is probably really hopeless, but it's better to not saying it at all. So it's 4:57. We are going to be having Beyond Zero up next.